What does it take to lose everything? For most Americans, the answer is a single medical bill or a blown transmission. That is the entire distance between a quiet driveway and sleeping on asphalt. Right now, 60% of the country has less than $1,000 saved for emergencies, and 63% are living strictly paycheck to paycheck. The financial buffer that used to catch working families has completely evaporated. That math pushes nearly 1 million fully employed Americans, people who stock shelves and drive delivery routes, into living full-time in RVs, vans, and trailers parked along our residential streets. The gap between a stable middle-class existence and a parking space has shrunk to a rounding error. Clocking in for 40 hours a week no longer guarantees you a roof over your head. It all comes down to a brutal equation. A full-time worker earning between $18 and $20 an hour brings home roughly $2,500 a month. Put that up against the cost of a basic apartment in most cities, which now runs exactly $2,500. The math zeroes out before you even factor in groceries, utilities, or gas. Moving into a cargo van is a forced defensive maneuver. It is the absolute last variable a worker can cut to keep their bank account from hitting the negative at the end of the month. Millions bought used RVs during the early pandemic years, assuming it was a short-term bridge to avoid eviction. Instead, that temporary bridge became a permanent trap. Working a full-time job simply does not generate enough capital to cover the baseline cost of survival. In late 2024, tech sector cuts dominated the news, but the purge happened everywhere simultaneously. Trucking companies, retail chains, and manufacturing plants slashed headcount at the exact same time, permanently closing off the economic safety valves workers normally use to pivot between industries. These corporations aren't pausing hires, waiting for the economy to improve. They are installing heavy robotic arms and outsourcing infrastructure to eliminate human headcounts entirely. You won't see this in official unemployment data. Corporations rely heavily on stealth layoffs by targeting the 36% of American workers who depend on gig work and short-term contracts. When an algorithm changes or a contract ends, those workers don't qualify for unemployment benefits. They simply vanish from the statistics. Policymakers are staring at an adorable fiction of labor health, completely blind to a permanent structural purge of the working class. While income stalled, the cost of staying alive skyrocketed. Basic living expenses like groceries and utilities jumped 25 to 40% in 3 years. Median wages crawled upward at a pathetic 5%. Instead of fixing the housing math, municipal governments targeted the victims. In 2025, courts and cities reclassified lived-in RVs strictly as vehicles, entirely stripping these families of standard eviction protections. A municipal tow requires zero due process. A family can be at work, and by the time they get back, their home is gone. Crushing impound fees guarantee they can't afford the release, meaning the vehicle and everything inside it gets auctioned off. Finding an alternative is nearly impossible. Corporate chains took over budget RV parks and doubled the rent. City shelters run at 100% capacity year-round, enforcing strict curfews and separation rules that literally tear families apart. With no parking spots and no shelter beds, people are forced into tents. The result is a 500% surge in massive encampments, packed beneath concrete overpasses, filled with laid-off warehouse workers and delivery drivers. Cities respond by spending hundreds of millions on aggressive police sweeps. These operations do absolutely nothing to reduce the population. They simply destroy workers' IDs and medications, scattering them 3 blocks away, where the camps reform within weeks. Municipal enforcement without a housing alternative is an incredibly expensive game of taxpayer-funded musical chairs that actively extends the duration of a person's homelessness. This economic hollowing reaches far beyond the encampments. Major American cities now face office vacancy rates between 20 and 35%, as millions of square feet sit completely unused. Without workers to support the downtown ecosystem, low-margin grocery chains and neighborhood pharmacies are forced to close their doors. In their place, urban food deserts are forming inside the very neighborhoods where retail demand used to be highest. Public infrastructure is bending under the weight of this vacuum. Libraries function as daytime refuge for the displaced, while transit agencies spend tens of millions on security and crisis response for overnight riders who have nowhere else to sleep. Even as city centers deteriorate, Corporate stock buybacks exceeded $950 billion in 2025. CEO compensation continues to climb, and Fortune 500 companies report record financial results, diverging sharply from the economic reality on the street. This is the zombie city, a system that is technically functioning, but no longer fulfilling its purpose. When the middle class is squeezed out and wealth is funneled exclusively upward, the civic foundation that funds public life begins to disintegrate. Current estimates put the number of homeless children in the United States between 1.3 and 1.5 million. These children are sleeping in back seats and RV bunks, managing chronic stress that research shows directly impairs cognitive development and long-term learning. Policy responses tend to focus on the 15% of the homeless population who generate over half of all emergency service calls. Because these individuals are the most visible in psychiatric crises or encampments, they end up defining how the entire problem is framed and addressed. This leaves city governments stuck in a loop. Building housing takes 5 years, while clearing a camp takes a single morning. Political incentives prioritize the footage generated by a sweep over the complex multi-agency coordination required to fix zoning or healthcare. If the underlying math of survival remains unchanged, 1.5 to 2.5 million additional households are projected to slip into housing insecurity over the next 2 years. The economy didn't just bend, it has mathematically broken. Until the structure of work and the cost of survival are realigned, parking lots will continue to fill with people who pack our groceries. How is the gig economy or the cost of living crisis impacting your community? Let us know in the comments.